10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 286. Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 286 of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. A brand new month equals a brand new series. And this month we're going to talk about how you can create a sustainable scale practice routine that's going to last you for the rest of your life. We know that scales are something that we should be practicing each and every day, regardless of what level we're at. And this is going to be the way that keep it fresh and exciting and keep you on those scales, working with a metronome and mastering your instrument, as well as learning some brand new sounds and keeping that routine going. But before we get into the show, as always, I want to remind you that we do not have any advertisements on this show, which means the only way that we support ourselves is through listeners like you donating a small amount of money each month. And we do that through the website Patreon. It is a great way to support creators directly. And when you join our Patreon, you get the great feeling that you are keeping these episodes coming at you week in and week out. And you also get a PDF and audio recording with each and every episode. So those benefits far outweigh the cost. And if you're looking to get better at jazz, highly suggest signing up for our Patreon. You can do that by going to our website, 10minutejazzlesson.com, clicking on one of the Patreon banners and getting yourself signed up today. Wanted to give a quick shout out to some new patrons this week. Thank you to our new $3 patron, Johannes, and thank you to our new $5 patrons, Mark and Sarah. Thank you so much for joining the Patreon family. We've got over 350 members over there that are reaping the benefits of those weekly PDFs and audio recordings. So if you'd like to get in on that, 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon banners, get yourself signed up, and you get instant access to all 286 episodes that we have done on this show. All right, let's jump into today's episode. So wanted to do a little bit of explaining before we jump into this. Now, we all know that we've done dozens and dozens of episodes on different scales, what they entail, how to make those scales, how to format them, but we've never really done a run of episodes on how to keep your scale routine happening each and every day. So scales are something that should just be a part of our practice routine. And like I said, it should be a part of your practice routine forever and ever and ever, as long as you play an instrument, as long as you study the jazz language, you need to stay on top of those scales. But it can be a very repetitive and boring part of the practice routine if we don't figure out a sustainable way to do them. And when I say sustainable, what I mean is a way that you're going to kind of look forward to practicing scales every day, a way that you're not going to get stuck in a rut of practicing the exact same scales the exact same way day in and day out. And believe me, I've gone through this in my own practice routine, and you'll get to the point where you say, well, I've pretty much exhausted my scale practice, so I guess I should just skip that part of my routine and work on something that's more interesting, work on something that's going to keep me more engaged. So my goal with this series is to give you some tools that are going to keep you practicing your scales year after year and keep it interesting for you, keep you wanting to practice those scales. So what I've prepared for you is a PDF that's kind of a matrix, and it gives you a whole bunch of options for how you can practice your scales. And the way that this works is if you choose one item from each category and mix and match on a continuous basis, you're never going to get bored. And there's so many different combinations on this sheet that you will really never run out of options, never run out of combinations, and this should be a sustainable way to practice your scales, even if you're doing really basic scales. This is not about practicing, super advanced scales. It should be a way that you can approach even the most basic scales day in and day out. So let's start looking at this PDF. If you have access to the Patreon, have the PDF in front of you so that you can see what I'm talking about. And what I've done is I've organized this into 4 separate categories that describe how you can play a scale. And then in each one of those categories, there's sort of sub-items that are going to make you play the scale in a different way. So the first category is the direction you're playing the scale. So we have 3 options: ascending and descending, ascending only, and descending only. So there's our 3 options in our first category. Our second category is the order with which you will play through the keys. And we have a whole bunch of options here. So the first option is circle of fourths. Second option is circle of fifths. Third one is chromatic. Fourth is whole steps, of which you will do 2 sets of whole steps to get through all 12 keys. The fifth option is minor thirds, of which you will do 3 sets to get through all 12 keys. And the sixth option is a really interesting one that I've been super into lately, which is tritones. And you will do 6 sets of 2 tritones, and you will get through all 12 keys. The third category is the form of scale, right? So we're going to start by studying 3 different forms of scale: major scale, melodic minor scale, and harmonic minor scale. Those are the absolute essentials that I think everybody needs to know and have total fluency with. If you know your majors, your melodic minors, and your harmonic minors, you've got a really, really good base to work from for so much of jazz harmony. And in later episodes, we're going to talk about different scales outside of these basics that will come in really handy for you. But if you do not know those 3 forms of scales in all 12 keys, you need to take care of that first. And that's why we're covering this. So I've got those 3 items listed: major, melodic minor, harmonic minor. And then we have 2 other options underneath that. We could pick 2 forms out of those 3, practice those on a day, or we can pick all 3 forms if we have a lot of time to practice and we're feeling like, okay, I'm really going to quiz myself on all 3 forms, major, melodic, and harmonic minor. We could do that as well. And then our 4th category, which is also really important, is tempo. And what I've done is I've broken this down into pretty vague terms, but I think this will really help you: slow, medium, and fast. And this is really important because sometimes when we develop the ability to play scales at a fast tempo, we never go back to those slow or medium tempos, but those are really, really important. Just because you can play a scale fast does not mean that you should permanently play it at a really, really fast tempo. You will actually lose the ability to play it slowly, which is not a very good result. Okay. So what do we want to do with this sheet? Here's the idea. You pick 1 item from each of the 4 categories, and that is your scale practice for the day. And what you do is you just randomly choose between these different items, okay? So an example would be, I'm going to start with the first category. So I'm going to say, okay, today I'm going to play ascending scales only. Then I'm going to go down to the next category, which is order, and I'm going to pick one of those randomly. So let's say chromatic is what I'm going to do. So now I'm playing ascending scales. I'm using the chromatic order to get through all of the keys. Then I go down to the next category and I pick a form. So today I will pick harmonic minor scales. So what do I have so far? I'm going to play ascending harmonic minor scales in a chromatic order. And then the last thing that I have to pick is I have to pick my tempo. So I'm going to do them at a medium tempo today. So I've used this sheet to tell me what I am going to do today in my practice routine, my scale practice routine. I'm going to play ascending harmonic minor scales chromatically at a medium tempo. Boom. I have just figured out my scale routine for the day. So let's hear what that would sound like. I'm going to go through 6 keys of harmonic minor scales at a medium tempo, ascending only. So I'm going to start on concert C and run through that set of scales. I'm just going to do 6 keys instead of 12 just to save some time here on the episode because we're already at 10 minutes. So of course I would keep going through all 12 keys, but that's just an example of what I would choose on that day. Okay, so then what I would do on the second day is I would go back to my sheet and I would choose some different options. So let's choose from the first category, both ascending and descending. So I'm going to do both. My order, I am going to choose whole steps. So I'm going to do 2 sets of whole steps so I get through all 12 keys. My third one, I'm going to choose 2 forms. So I'm going to do both major and melodic minor for this one. And then for my tempo, I'm going to choose a slow tempo. So this would be an example of the next day. So now I am doing both ascending and descending, major and melodic minor, in whole steps at a slow tempo. And again, I'll start on concert C and move in whole steps this time. So again, I would continue through all 6 keys. I'm going to spare you listening to me do that. You can work on this on your own. But can you see the different combinations? This is going to be so fantastic for you. You're going to be hearing a different thing every day, a different order. You're going to be thinking through a different pattern each and every day. Your thought process is going to be completely different, and you're going to develop a real sense of flexibility as you go through this, a different tempo every day. This is so great, and this is what has kept me interested in practicing scales for all these years. So if you're stuck in a rut for practicing scales, or you feel like you really don't have those 3 forms, major, harmonic minor, melodic minor, down, start doing this immediately and you'll start seeing results immediately. All right, so next time we're going to talk about some different scales that are very useful in the jazz language, and we'll talk about how I approach those a little bit differently, particularly with scales that are octatonic in nature, or have one set interval that are a little bit different than these 3 forms that I've talked about, because there are some differences that we can use there. So if you want to grab the PDF, which I highly recommend, go to 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon banners, and you can get yourself instant access to that material. If you have any questions for me, get in touch with me on the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Community Facebook group, or get in touch with me at 10minutejazzlesson@gmail.com, and I'd be happy to answer any of your questions. Hope you're all doing well out there. We'll see you next week with another brand new episode, and have a great weekend, everybody. Talk to you soon. Bye.